Hey you guys, you may be like me. You may have a bunch of dried out clay and running out of good workable clay. So I'm going to show you how to take dried clay and make it back and rehydrate it into some good moist clay. I have almost a full bucket of dried out clay. All of this, as long as it's not fired, we can rehydrate it. So what I'm going to do is take some water here. I've got another container and I kind of have, maybe 1.5 inches of water in this one. And I'm just going to fill it with this and get this clay down inside. Start it soaking up the water. It should soak it up pretty quickly. And when clay is bone dry instead of leather hard, the water rushes into it. And sometimes you can even hear it just kind of bubbling sound as it begins to rehydrate. Now, I'm gonna let this set for 24 hours. And I'm gonna come back at it tomorrow and add, or maybe tonight, and check it to see if I can, how it looks, and get it to absorb that water, and then we're gonna get it into working shape. Can you hear it? There it is. I can even hear it. While that clay is beginning to soak up some water, I'm going to take some of this dried out clay and make clay dust. Now you might want to go outside and be careful to not get dust everywhere and not breathe it. But I'm going to start breaking it up and rolling it with a rolling pin to try and crush it into dust. So I'm only going to do a little bit right here, and then you can do all of yours. But I'm pounding it. I'm on top of a cloth so I can just pick it up and put it into my container. But this is going to be where I put a whole bunch of powdery stuff. I've crushed some. It sort of stuck to my rolling pin. A great thing is a credit card, and I can pull this dry stuff off. And also the credit card is really good for transferring it if you're not on top of something. So I can just get underneath this and put it inside my container and save it for later. We're gonna need it when we take that clay that's been sitting in water. It'll probably have too much water in it, and then we're gonna mix it so that it is the perfect consistency, that moist clay that's very pliable, and get it ready for another project. So hang on. Look at this clay. It's been sitting in here only a few minutes, and it's already turning into mush. It doesn't take long to absorb that water and become mush. Now it's going to have too much water in it, and we're going to have to join it. But for now, I think I need to keep letting these bigger, thicker pieces absorbing. So I'm going to leave it for maybe not overnight. I may be able to check it in just an hour. Look at this mushy, soft clay now. I think it's still, I came at it an hour later, but I think it still needs to sit longer. I'm going to let it sit completely overnight, and then I'm going to come in and get it back into a good working condition. But I have to see how much water it will either need to add into it or add clay into it that's dried out and take the water out. So letting it set overnight. Here's my clay. It's been sitting overnight. I also have my dry stuff here. I'm going to take some of this wet clay that's a little too wet and begin to add some of the dry to it. Now the dry is a lot like flour, and probably should have crunched a little bit more. But if you've ever baked before, the flour helps make a dough a little less sticky. It helps it stick together and has gluten in it. The clay is a little too wet, and so we need to add some of the drier clay to it to get it back to that moist stage. And it's almost to the point right now where I can wedge it. And remember that wedging does a number of things. It takes air bubbles out of clay. It gets it all the same consistency. And so right now I don't have it all the same consistency. I have a little bit of chunks in my powder, but you can see it's beginning to come together. And I'm gonna probably let this set for a couple hours. It will begin to absorb the the water from the wetter part of the clay will go into those little chunks. And I'm just trying to keep it all contained and get it back to that moist stage where I can use it for a project. I'm gonna let this set for a little bit. I have 2 chunks made. I'm gonna make one last chunk with this here clay. Taking it out, hoping I have enough of the dry stuff to wedge. So I got a bunch of dry here, and you roll it back, push forward, roll it back, push forward, roll it back, push forward. This method, if you remember, is called the ram's head method. And I will show you hopefully in a moment. But I'm just trying to work this dry stuff into the wetness of the clay. It's a lot like kneading dough, and gets all over your hands, just like dough does when it's pretty sticky. So we just keep working this wet with the dry underneath it. And then I will combine this. All this dried out clay is still reusable. It doesn't matter that it's dried out. It only matters that it's not fired. So I'm sort of trying to contain my mess here. And it's coming together. May need to sit a little bit. And then I will have good workable clay. So let me show you why it's called the ram's head method. It kind of comes out here. It looks like a snout. And if you put 2 eyes right there, and then around here, it begins to curve like a ram's horns. So that's the ram's head method. Look at this big hunk of clay, all made from recycled clay and ready to become a new project, reclaimed. So grab out your dry clay, get it wet, and then grab out some more dry clay, crush it, and combine the wet and the dry, and you will soon not have to pay for any new clay. You can just reclaim your old clay. All right, time to work.